Welcome to the VA presentation on advanced care planning. My name is Susie Morgan. I am the advanced planning group visit coordinator here at the Sioux Falls VA, as well as specialty medicine social worker. Today, we're going to talk about advanced care planning, what it is and the benefits of it, and we'll talk about advanced care planning documents. When we talk about advanced care planning, we really look at medical goals of care, that they are in line with our medical preferences. And when those two are in line, and when we have completed both of those, we really have completed advanced care planning, or at least participated and engaged in. So advanced care planning is a process. It occurs in advance of a medical emergency that either might leave you unable to speak or unable to make decisions for yourself. Advanced care planning requires thought about your medical goals and that they align with what your medical preferences are. And so when we talk about medical goals, you may ask yourself, what would you like to achieve through healthcare, your healthcare? What is important to you? What do you want to accomplish? Possibly staying or becoming independent, maybe curing an illness, improving your overall quality of life when a cure is not possible. If you have chronic pain, maybe your medical goals of care are easing symptoms to make you feel more comfortable. It could be meeting a specific personal goal, or maybe a goal of attending a wedding, a graduation, or taking a trip. So those are how we would define what your medical goals of care are. When we think about medical preferences, they're really informed by your goals of care. Maybe medical preferences might be, who would make medical decisions for me if I can't? Where would physical and/or medical care take place if I'm unable to take care of myself and I have no family or other support network to do so? What would be my preference about prolonging life when death is imminent, or allowing a natural death? When your heart stops beating and there's no pulse, choosing cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which we call CPR, or do not attempt resuscitation, which is often referred to as a DNR. So all of this combined, your medical goals of care and your medical preferences, makes for advanced care planning. When we talk about advanced care planning, I said at the beginning, it is a process, and it's really a 4-step process. And that process involves first about thinking what is important to you. Maybe it's family, maybe it's being having no pain. Maybe it is quality of life versus quality of or quantity of days. So you think about what is important. Who do you trust if you can't make decisions for you, or you can't voice your medical decisions? Who do you trust that knows you well, that knows your values, to make those decisions for you on your behalf? Will they make those decisions even if they're different from what they would want medically? Would they honor what you want? Have you had a discussion with that person to even ask them, would you make decisions for me if I can't? And have a discussion about what your medical preferences are, what your medical goals are. And then lastly, we put that down on paper, a legal document, what we would call an advance directive. There are 4 basic types of advance directives. There is power of attorney for healthcare. There is what we call a living will. There is a physician orders of life-sustaining treatment. And there's a do not resuscitate order, or do not attempt resuscitation order. The power of attorney and the living will, the authority is yourself. meaning you are able to complete these documents on your own. The physician's orders of life-sustaining treatment and the do not resuscitate order has to be completed with a physician, with a medical provider, or physician's assistants, or a nurse practitioner, depending on what your state allows. So in reviewing these documents, if we look at power of attorney for healthcare, again, I said the authority is yourself. You can complete this on your own. It is a legal document that serves as a mechanism for naming someone to make medical decisions for you when you cannot make them yourself. Oftentimes you might hear this referred to as my medical power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, healthcare agent, surrogate decision maker. It really, all of those encompass the same thing, and it's really who you name for power of attorney of healthcare. Living will, again, the authority is yourself. You can complete this all on your own. This is where you can express your medical preferences. Your medical goals may range, as we said earlier, allowing a natural death, or maybe prolonging life when death is imminent, or uncertain. And so we really comes down to, when we look at that living will, what is important to you? Is it quality of life, being with family and friends, surrounded by loved ones, or quantity of days? I don't care about my quality of life. I just want to be kept alive, even if it means artificially. The physician orders of life-sustaining treatment. This complements your living will and your medical preferences into an actionable medical order. And so again, a physician has to sit down with you and fill this out. It is a portable, actionable medical order that says, do not perform CPR. Do not administer artificial nutrition. Do not administer artificial respiration. So all of those things are combined into a post, and it's a medical order that all medical physicians, PAs, EMTs have to follow. And the South Dakota Comfort One is a medical do not resuscitate order. And again, it's portable, it's actionable, meaning that it can transfer if you're out of the hospital and you do not have, you stop breathing and you do not have a pulse, and you have something that identifies you as do not resuscitate, paramedics and EMTs must follow that order. So when we look at our medical care and related documents, and we look at the continuum of care and where they come into play versus our health status, we can take a look on the left, very healthy to least healthy, meaning least healthy, you've got a lot of medical problems and probably dying may be imminent. So the standard of care, we're very healthy, is treatment automatically provided when you can't communicate. That standard level of care is always going to be save your life. So that would mean if you're out of the hospital and you are out shopping, and let's say you have a heart attack and your heart stops beating, there's no pulse, paramedics are called. The standard level of care is going to be to save your life and to provide resuscitation, that cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. Maybe when we start to go through life, we get a little bit older, maybe we start to develop some chronic diseases, maybe diabetes, maybe COPD. You still live a fairly normal and good life, but you have some chronic diseases. You might want to start to look at filling out documents that really speak to your medical preferences and your medical goals. And that's where the advance directive would come into play, okay? It would come into play by naming somebody to make healthcare decisions for you if you can't. and also completing that living will. What are your medical preferences? And still the authority on those legal documents and that level of care is yourself. When we get into medical orders where we start to have more, our chronic conditions have increased, let's say, and or we have some type of incurable disease where maybe you are given 6 months or less to live, then we would complete those medical orders, the physician's orders of life-sustaining treatment and the do not resuscitate orders. So that's where the documents sort of come into play versus where we are at on that continuum of health status, the continuum of care. This is just another form of the other chart that we saw, and when you would want to complete, again, those documents. So we've got that continuum of care, right? All adults, healthy, unhealthy, should be completing an advance directive. Doesn't matter if you don't have any chronic diseases, you're very, very healthy. Everybody should have an advance directive. Why you should have an advance directive is because we don't have control over what happens in our day-to-day lives. We can plan for things, but we really don't have control when it comes right down to it. And that can be verified by getting a phone call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon saying a loved one was in a car accident, or perhaps you were in a car accident, or somebody was injured another way. Now, we don't hope for that. This is just an example. So you complete an advance directive, you update it periodically. You would want to update your advance directive, maybe when there's some sort of life change where maybe you get married, maybe you get divorced, maybe the healthcare agent that you had named previously passes away, or you no longer speak to them. Whatever the situation is, your advance directive should be taken out and reviewed, I would say 1 to 3 years. Take it out and look at it. Sometimes your medical preferences change because your medical history has changed, or you've just aged. And so you might want to update your medical preferences, your living will. And then we're diagnosed with an advanced or terminal illness, or maybe we just have a failure to thrive. Maybe we're very elderly and we're just not really doing well. And we need people to come into our homes, or we need to go into some type of facility to have all our daily needs met. And so that's when we might look at that physician's order of life-sustaining treatment. That's where we might need the physician to get involved and complete that document for us that says, in the event of, do not prolong my life, or do not administer any life-saving measures. Okay, so outside of all that, conversation should be happening with your loved ones. It doesn't have to happen 24/7, but there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we're going to do a date night, and tonight we're going to talk about what your medical goals are, what your medical preferences are. A 5-minute conversation of, would you be my healthcare agent? And I just want you to know that if I'm brain dead, don't put me on any ventilator. That's not advanced care planning, and that's not a conversation. The more you can talk about what it is your medical preferences are and what your medical goals are, the easier it will be for your loved ones to make decisions for you on your behalf if they're ever put in that position. And the it will be your wishes and your preferences will be honored because you've had those conversations, or more likely that they will be honored. Okay, so I mentioned the advance directive. So this is the VA advance directive, and as I mentioned earlier, you can name power of attorney for healthcare, and you can complete what is known as a living will. Okay, the VA is combined. The advance directive and the living will is combined into one document. It can only be completed by somebody who has decisional capacity, meaning you have to understand the risks and the consequences. You have to understand what you are signing. You have to be able to reason why you're making these decisions. So, and capacity can come and go, but you have to have decisional capacity in that moment to complete an advance directive. It is enforced when a person loses decisional capacity or unable to verbalize what your medical wishes would be. It can be changed at any time. You should always keep the original, and copies should be given to your healthcare agents. It should be readily available and know where it is kept in your home. This is something that you wouldn't keep in a safe deposit box down in a bank. It should be readily available. And again, as I said previously, it should be reviewed every 1 to 3 years or when there is a major life change. So on the second page of the VA Advance Directive is the page where you can name or designate your healthcare agents. It's not mandatory that you do so. Your agents should be 18 years or older. And as I said previously, someone that is familiar with your values and wishes and knows you well, and someone that you trust to carry out your wishes, even if they do not agree with them. The benefits of naming a healthcare agent is you can name someone to speak on your behalf regarding your preferred medical wishes. It is specific. It lifts the burden of family and friends guessing of what you would want. It can lessen conflict between family members, and it can prevent someone that you don't want making decisions for you. So, what happens if you do not name a healthcare agent? The VA will follow what we call a next of kin hierarchy. And that hierarchy goes as follows. If there is no designated healthcare agent, and if there is no court-appointed legal guardian, then we will look to your spouse. It will default to your spouse. If you have no spouse, it is going to default to your adult children, whether they be biological or adopted. If you have no adult children, it'll default to a parent, no parents, adult siblings, no siblings, grandparent, grandchild, and you get the idea. Very on the last end of the spectrum is going to be a close friend or other relative, and I'm going to speak to that. So a couple of things that I want to speak to regarding this hierarchy is, let's say you are married and by default, your spouse will be making those decisions. But if you really haven't had a conversation, which I do see quite frequently here at the VA, when veterans come in and fill out advance directives, they automatically, which naturally I think we all tend to do, we would put our spouse, right? You've been married for 20 some years, 60 some years. They know you well. They know what I want. And that's fine if your spouse is comfortable doing that. But I always say, did you ask them? Because maybe your spouse might not be comfortable making that decision because of the attachment. So by default, it will fall to your spouse. And if you haven't had that conversation, then there will be a certain amount of burden. Let's say you are married, but you are separated and not legally divorced. We are still going to call upon that person who is your legal spouse to be making those decisions. So again, we have seen scenarios here at the VA where nobody was listed as a healthcare agent. There was a contact in the chart that was at one time a spouse, never legally divorced, just separated for about 5 years, and they hadn't talked for the last 3. So that person is going to be making the decisions. That is why it's very important that you name a healthcare agent so that it doesn't fall into the wrong hands per se. Same thing with adult children. It doesn't go in order from oldest to youngest. They're all on the same level, and we can see conflict. Some children will say, I just talked to, mom or dad a week ago, and we had this conversation, and this is what they said. And another child will come back and say, I don't think so. That does not sound like mom or dad. And now we've got a family, children in conflict that can't come to any decisions. And we have seen when there's no healthcare agent named and families are in conflict, it'll rip families apart. It'll tear them apart. So that's why it's vitally important. The last thing I want to say about this hierarchy is if you have a partner or significant other and you possibly cohabitate, or maybe you don't, but you've been together for years, and this is the person that knows you well, and this is the person that, if you would have named a healthcare agent, would have been named, but because there was nobody named, this person will be the last person chosen to make those decisions. We will go through this hierarchy tree, and that person will be the very last person. So just some things to keep in mind, the importance of naming a healthcare agent. This is the living will section, and it's going to ask you some questions about what your preferences might be. You can't see it on the slide, but one of the questions might be, if you're in a coma and have severe brain damage with little chance of recovery, would you want a life-sustaining treatment? If you would initial the box yes. The middle column says, I don't know. It all depends on the circumstance. And if that's your choice, you would initial that box. And lastly, to the very right, the third box is no. I would not want my life prolonged by any artificial means, and you would initial that box. So one box per question, but your choices are yes, I don't know, it all depends, or no. And so what our living will does is it goes through and it asks you to read the questions and then initial a box. Okay. The reason why I'm going to come back to always having a conversation, or the importance of a conversation outside this document, is that these questions are very vague, and medical situations can vary and be of different severity, degree and severity. Okay. This section in the VA Advanced Directive is an additional preference page. This page allows you to write in any additional preferences that you might have regarding your mental health. Maybe it's about cultural things that you believe in or would want to happen. Or maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's burial. Anything that you think would be very helpful for your healthcare agent to make decisions for you. Or anything written down that you want somebody to know about your medical goals and your medical preferences. And the very last page on the VA Advanced Directive is the signing page where you sign it. And there is a very specific way that it has to be signed and witnessed in order for this to be valid in the VA. So it must be witnessed by two people. And those people who witness it cannot be your designated healthcare agents. So on that second page, if you named a spouse and an adult child as your healthcare agent, they cannot sign off as a witness on this document. Your witnesses should be 18 years or older. Ideally, they should not be named as a beneficiary in your estate or have financial responsibility over you. It could look like coercion. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Notary is optional. On the back side of this page that you see on the screen, you can have it notarized. But again, if you get it notarized, the notary should serve as a witness, and wherever you get it notarized, whether it be a bank or wherever, Somebody else should serve as the other witness. Now, these dates have to match up. When you sign it and date it, the witness dates have to be the same. Sometimes we see advance directives come in where maybe somebody signed it on May 1st, 2025, and the witnesses signed it on May 5th, 2025. It's not valid, and we will return it, or we'll get a hold of you and ask you to redo it. All the dates need to match up, and you want them to match up, and you want this to be witnessed because you don't want somebody else completing this document for you and putting things in there that you would not choose. So that's why it's vitally important that this document be witnessed.